The American President Joe Biden and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron have hailed the essential alliance between Washington and Paris. Now, both the leaders have in fact paid tribute to their countries' association with each other and have also acknowledged the difficult moments that lie ahead for the two nations.
It's an honor, a genuine honor to host you for the first state visit of my administration and to celebrate the enduring strength and vitality of the great friendship between France and the United States of America.
Now, Emmanuel Macron, who's on a state visit to the United States, also stressed on the need for the United States and France to keep the West united as the Russian invasion into Ukraine continues.
Et cette histoire commune nous oblige. Aussi, face au retour de la guerre sur le sol européen suite à l'agression russe contre l'Ukraine et face aux crises multiples qui frappent nos nations et nos sociétés, il nous faut savoir redevenir frères d'armes.
And Joe Biden, who honored his French counterpart with the first state dinner of his presidency, also told the reporters at the joint White House press briefing that he had no immediate plans of contacting the Russian President Vladimir Putin, further asserting on how he's prepared to speak with the Russian leader only if he's looking for a way to end the war in Ukraine.
I'm prepared to speak with Mr. Putin if, in fact, there is an interest in him deciding he's looking for a way to end the war. He hasn't done that yet. If that's the case, in consultation with my French and my NATO friends, I'll be happy to sit down with Putin to see what he has in mind.
Now, apart from the war in Ukraine, both the leaders also presented a united front on climate change and have vowed to settle a spat over the green industry subsidies. Now, Biden has reaffirmed that Washington's support for the green industry was not intended to be at Europe's expense. The statement was made after Emmanuel Macron had said earlier that he and other European leaders were very concerned about the incentives and subsidies that were given in the new law known as the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, the law favors the American-made climate technology, and the subsidies would be an enormous setback for the European companies. The comments were shortly made after Biden and Macron sat down for their centerpiece talks of a pomp-filled French state visit. All right, now to give us more perspective and to help us understand this very complex and very interesting French-American relationship, we're being joined by Christina Dragomir, who's a political commentator, and she's joining us live from New York. Now, Ms. Dragomir, this is a very interesting state visit by the French president to the White House. And one of the comments during this trip that has stood out is where Emmanuel Macron said that the American subsidies that are given are very aggressive. And this, he has said, is counterproductive for European green technologies. How is America looking at this?
Good being with you, Mohammed. Thank you for having me. I think it's important to put this into perspective. This is indeed the first visit of President Macron into the White House, but this is not the first encounter of President Biden with President Macron. A long-standing friendship and a long-standing collaboration between them. And as they are getting along very well, as you very well mentioned earlier, in special relations, especially considering their relationship with NATO and their united front against Russian aggression in Ukraine, there are some divergences when it comes to how are they going to proceed economically. So what we have seen that is happening in the United States is that United States has passed the Inflation Reduction Act under the Biden administration, which is considered to be a resounding success, especially on the part of the Democrats. Of course, the Republicans are also engaging critically with this, but nevertheless, this is so far considered to be a boom to the American economy to reduce inflation, as it says, but at the same time also offer alternatives in addressing the increasing issue of climate change. And in doing so, indeed, the bill and the act right now is actually American-centric, which means that it supports the production of electric vehicles by offering subsidies to the American-made manufactured vehicle. So as a result of it, American companies are definitely in a preferential position. This, of course, to the detriment of other vehicle making companies like the ones that come from France. But we also need to mention that even though the Biden administration has been supporting this act that is American-centric, that it is putting the American companies in a very good position, at the same time as this is happening, Macron, on his end, has been pushing for legislation that would support the French production of vehicles and the French production within his own economy. So I think this is actually going both sides. This is not something that we see only on the part of America, and this is something that I think we really need to understand a little bit further in the years to come, because countries tend to make those decisions that are being made based on their national economic growth. At the same time, if I may add, another aspect is that actually President Biden, upon the meeting with President Macron, when this was discussed, he admitted that while he's not apologetic about this Inflation Reduction Act, we have to understand that this is going to be probably the historical act that is going to lead to the remembrance of President Biden. So, of course, he's not going to apologize for that. But he also says that there are some glitches and there are some changes that need to be made to the law. So we are seeing also a willingness to maybe compromise and maybe start working through this in a way that it's more collaborative with the other countries.
Absolutely, indeed, Ms. Dragomir. It's very interesting looking at the way, the diplomacy is in fact being conducted between Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron. The United States and France share a very close historical relationship. But in the last couple of years, there have been very clear differences. One of the other aspects that has garnered a lot of attention is the differences which emerged when the United States got into this AUKUS agreement, which had riled up the French president. He had said that this was in many ways a betrayal for the French people. Do you think that bitterness has now been put behind by the two leaders?
So I think you're referring to the fact that in 2021, Australia bailed on a submarine contract with France that was worth $66 billion. This was argued on the part of Australia that they really needed to be competitive, considering the urgency of the military engagements that are happening within their region. And as a result of it, they decided to go into a contract not with France, who was winning over Germany at the time in terms of their contract for the submarines production, but with the United States and with the United Kingdom. As a result of it, what has happened is that France has pulled its ambassador from Washington and said that trust is like love, declarations are good, but prove it's better. And it seemed that it was a really big feud between them. But this is also a game at the political international level. So what we are seeing, I think, or at least we really need to look at this a little bit closer, is to see how the world has changed since 2021. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, it's a significant moment in the history of the world, especially in the history of Europe. And it marked the beginning of new era of politics within Europe, but also with respect to NATO. So I think that previous feuds that were regarding some economic deals that were made in the past are currently seen under very different circumstances, because the goals, the vision, and also the dangers that are envisioned right now are considered to be so much more important and so much more urgent. And therefore, coming together in these alliances within NATO system, but also forging this personal relationship between the world leaders, showing a common front against the aggression that is happening in Russia. It's very important.
Indeed, Ms. Dragomir. Very interesting there, the manner in which the relationship has, of course, progressed in the last 12 odd months. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from New York and getting us all those insights. So although it is all smiles and handshakes between Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron, there are some pretty niggling and very interesting issues that the United States and France have to put behind them. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.